Hey, everybody. It's Steve Larziliere, president, founder of Stoke. So if you read my email, if you didn't, the big news is that I am transitioning to the board of directors of Stoked. And we have hired a new president, and their name is Patricia Charlemagne, Dr. Patricia Charlemagne. So say hi, Patricia.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Steve, thank you so much for founding and creating Stoked and creating such a phenomenal organization that is here for me to step into at the right time, in the right place, with the right people.
That's awesome. So I guess the long story short is, so I've been running Stoked um, since January, officially January 2005. We did our pilot year in January 2004. And so I've been at Stoked for 17 years, 18 years, right? And so, when you run an organization for as long as I have, there's kind of nowhere else to go. And as Stoked, I like to call Stoked this big whale that's floating through the ocean. And I may have started it, but I'm not the one to sort of to continue it moving forward. And so Stoked sort of, I felt needed new leadership. It was time for me to move on to do other things. Earlier in 2021, we started talking about it with the board. And then during the summer of 2021, we put out an ad for an executive director. And so, throughout the process, I interviewed about 70 people. I probably had over 150 applications. I interviewed 70 people, first interviews, and then I had about 16 second interviews, 6 third interviews, and 3 final in-person interviews. Isn't that crazy? And so
I know all that. Wow, that's amazing.
So for the most amazing part is that I knew it was going to be Patricia from that first time. I knew that it was going to be. I knew that it was going to be you, and I just needed to go through the motions. So anyway, so Patricia's been working with us since October, and so we've had this good transition experience. She was brought on as the executive director. I stayed on as president. And so we were overlapped, and I was training her, onboarding her. And now is the time for her to sort of take over. Stoked is at its height. Financially, we're doing good. Our programs are full on. We got Chicago back on. We're growing again. I'm super excited for her to take over. So Patricia, first of all, welcome. I'm so excited. I want everybody in the community to meet you. Why don't you tell everybody a bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I always like to start with the story of when I was growing up. I always had a very strong opinion, always wanted to look out for other people. And my dream job was to become an attorney. Became an attorney. The dream job, once being an attorney, was to work for the assistant district attorney's office, for the district attorney's office. Had that job, was in a preliminary hearing, and there was a gentleman at the defendant's desk, but didn't look like the gentleman in my my hearing book in the files. And so I kept looking at the gentleman and I kept looking at the book, and they just didn't look the same to me. And so the judge was becoming so impatient with me because, we have so many preliminary hearings that we need to do. And I was just taking time and looking at the person and looking at the book. So as I was about to start, the bailiff comes out and says, "Your Honor, we apologize. We brought out the wrong defendant." And that's when I realized victims were on both sides of the bench, and that I needed to figure out how to help all people, because the system is not designed to support and treat everyone the same way. So since then, I've spent the bulk of my career working in nonprofit organizations that either stand independently or they work in partnership with schools or other social service agencies. And so that was while I was in Philadelphia. I moved to New York. You know, my parents are Haitian. I'm from Haitian descent. And they were like, you have a law degree. Why don't you practice law? Um, so I tried that a little bit and it just wasn't my passion. Worked in schools, worked in higher ed, and recently completed my doctorate in education and organizational leadership, and saw this opportunity and was able to view this opportunity in a very different light than had I seen it at another time in my career. And the light was just that, you know, there are tons of after school programs everywhere. Like everyone is doing after school programs, right? It's the same typical model. Everyone's doing the same cookie cutter thing. I've done the same cookie cutter thing for years upon years. Sure, we do high quality programs and we want to make it better, but at the end of the day, the programs just all look the same to me. And so when I learned about Stoked, I was like, wow, that's really different. That's an experience that can't be replicated by other teachers in the school or other people in the district. To be able to take youth to the mountains for them to snowboard, to be able to take youth to beaches so they could surf, to help youth find places in their own communities where they can skateboard. I mean, like no one else is doing that. And so for me, that was just so exciting, right? And part of the excitement was the fact that like, I've never snowboarded. I think during my interview, I kept talking about, I ski, I go skiing, but like, that's nothing like snowboarding, right? I swim, nothing like surfing, right? Skateboarding kind of looks dangerous to me at my age with little kids and whatnot. And so just the excitement of exposing younger people to these sorts of opportunities, like I was excited by that exposure, you know, at this point in my career with everything that I've done. And so I could only imagine how exciting it could be for a young person to be able to experience all these activities, and particularly young people who live in underserved communities, marginalized communities, communities that, you know, there's a long list of things that's wrong in those communities, but there's also like a plethora of things that are wonderful in those communities. And so how do we celebrate people where they are in their communities and give them opportunities that don't reinforce the negatives and the deficit lens that people have, right? And so that was just super exciting. And I thought to myself, like my experience in youth development, my experience in after school and working with young people is because when I was a kid, I didn't know that I was from a working class family. I had no idea. I thought I was rich. You know, I had piano lessons, I had ballet lessons, I had all these things that made me feel like I was rich. And so to be able to give those kinds of different experiences to youth, I think is just phenomenal and will help to sort of reshape how they feel about themselves and sort of like some of the challenging aspects of the environment, and to rethink how they feel about themselves with all the beautiful things in their environment, right? And
Yeah.
so it just seemed like such a great opportunity for me that I was very, very interested. Little scared though, because again, I'm not the expert when it comes to snowboarding, skating, or surfing, but I get to learn, right? And get to learn with the kids. And because I believe in a growth mindset, it just seems like an exciting thing.
Absolutely. I loved what you just said about like, you know, because like I grew up working class as well. And I didn't have, you know, I had piano lessons, I had baseball, and like, you know, I had, you know, camps and different opportunities. And those things when we were younger, they were easily more accessible, and families they were more accessible to people. And, you know, the past 30 to 40 years, like the widening income gap. And so like, as you've been immersed in this, you know, action sports, what are the things that have like sort of highlighted to you, like, oh, potentially action sports are needed, like this particular brand of youth development is needed for underserved kids? Like what did you learn in the past couple of
So
months?
one of the things that is at the forefront of my mind that I never really even thought about is like, why action sports, right? Like we could do all kinds of different things, but why specifically action sports? There are lots of reasons for it, right? So the first piece is around like the health and wellness, right? They're all activities that require kids and people not to be sedentary, to be outside, to enjoy the environment, the elements. They're all team-based activities in some way, shape, or form, right? You have to work with others in order to grow and develop and gain the exposure. But the piece, particularly in our society today, that also is really important is that we're preparing students to understand the breadth and scope of careers available to them in action sports. Like, you can love this activity and you can make this part of your career. And it doesn't mean that you have to become a professional snowboarder. You can become an educator, right? There are lots of different ways that students could use this exposure to think about their career plans and their future plans. And they get to decide what that is, whether they want to be a snowboarder, whether they want to be an entrepreneur. It is completely up to them. What we're doing is we're just exposing them to everything, all the opportunities in action sports. And that's a really cool vibe and a real cool culture behind action sports, that if you're not a part of it and you don't know it, you're not even aware of it. So again, that's the exposure piece that our kids need, and kids in our community and students in our community need.
That's awesome. What any cool experiences so far that that has happened since you joined?
I feel like there have been a lot of cool experiences. One is I was in Hawaii and got this close to getting on a surfboard, and I had the surfboard, but the waves are really crazy. But just thinking about getting on a surfboard, had you asked me about this 6 months ago, I would have said never in a million years. I would have talked about the sharks and I would have talked about the drowning. But like, no, everyone should have an opportunity to get on a surfboard and go out and experience that. And so, just like we want kids to be excited about education, and just like we want kids to be excited about growth mindset, we also need that as adults. And so I would love to, I've met people who do particular work around like Black women and surfing, and everyone should be able to surf and know that it's an opportunity. And so this whole idea of like Black girls don't surf, we need to kill that, right? And like throw that out the window, because everyone can surf. And so that's been exciting. There was a trip to one of our snow mountains in New York, and I took my daughter with me, and she's all about snowboarding. Like, she's like, Mom, when do we come back? I want to snowboard. I want to snowboard. And she's so excited about it. And at that age, they have zero fear. And so that was really nice to see, because she had been skiing before, but snowboarding was completely new to her. Um, the skateboarding piece, I had the opportunity to go to one of the Saturday sessions in the Bronx. And I just thought it was so awesome that there was this gem in a community that often isn't recognized or valued for all the wonderful things within that borough. And so to see that beautiful skate park and see how there were youth from Stoke there were youth from the community there were older people from the community there, and thinking about like, wow, this is amazing that there's this oasis that I never knew about and lots of other people don't know about. And so there's just been a lot of cool experiences for me so far. And it's only been a couple of months, right?
Yeah, you started October 1. So this is you're gonna go into month 4, right?
Mhm.
So tell us, what's your vision? Where are you gonna take Stoked?
I think that there are so many phenomenal ways to move forward. One of the things that I like to start any kind of visioning with is like, how are we going to get there? So I can give you all these ideas of what I'm thinking, but I think the how do we get there is the more important part. I want this to be done in partnership with the board. I want this to be done in partnership with the school communities, with the youth, with the staff, because we all have a lot to gain from this organization and moving forward. So, where do I see Stoked 5 years from now? We're going to have a lot more programs available in New York City, Chicago, and LA. I'd love to see us expand our volunteers and mentors to not just be people from corporations, or not just be people who are employed in traditional sectors, but to have people in the community become part of our volunteer cadres. We have partnerships with schools. I think it would be great to have partnerships with other community-based organizations, including religious ones, because they have the set group of people that are part of their communities. And so I could envision having some groups go be part of our snowboarding excursions, doing that at least 4 times a year. So it's about expanding our programs. It is about increasing opportunities for career exposure and experiences for our youth. I would love to see a pipeline. We already have somebody on board, for example, who was a program youth, and now this person went on to being a program coordinator, and now they're like a head coach. And so creating more opportunities within the organization for our youth to see and understand that the world is their oyster and that anything is possible. I think there are two other pieces though that are a little bit different from where we've been in the past. One of them is just diving into this research area, particularly since we've served over 6,000 students, to find out like what has been the experience of BIPOC youth in action sports. How, do they describe their experiences and where are they today? I think that there needs to be a lot more research around action sports and the impact that it has and can have on youth of color. There's some research now on skateboarding, but we need to contribute to the literature on snowboarding, contribute to the literature on surfing. So that's a piece of it. I think another piece of it is just leadership in general for our youth. I mean, our youth are so phenomenal when given the opportunities or when we just listen to them, right? And so on the advocacy piece, there's a lot that can be done with mobility justice, environmental justice, and all these other areas that have an impact on communities. Having students understand how powerful they are and how they can have an impact on continuing to improve their communities. And so the career piece as well, having paid opportunities for students to cultivate and continue to cultivate a love for action sports. I think there are just a lot of ways that we can move forward. And so my vision is to develop that in partnership, in collaboration with our internal and external stakeholders.
That's awesome. So if you're watching, that's you. Yeah, no, I'm so moving forward, I'm going to be on the board of directors, and Salama is on the board, and we have a few other people that have been on: Devin George, Ellen O'Connell, Mara Nazatir, and Gina Rebelar. So we have some longtime board members, and I just want to thank them all through this process and this onboarding. At least for me, this leaving the way that I am, or leaving this position the way that I am, is I couldn't have asked for anything better. And I wanted to leave Stoked better than what I found it. And through this whole process, it's been a long journey of just letting go of Stoked, because realizing that we've raised lots of money, we've helped lots of people, we've impacted a lot of people, and to move from not being me, the founder, to we as the organization, and okay, what does Stoke need moving forward? And what we need moving forward is Patricia, right? And so
Listen, we need Patricia and Steve. I say this all the time. You are not leaving Stoke. Stop telling people you're leaving Stoke.
I'm not
You're
leaving
be
Stoke.
part of the board.
Yes.
And even if you weren't part of the board, I would still have you on speed dial, because I just have so much respect for you and the work that you've done. It's not a matter of changing the course. It's a matter of having it blossom.
Yeah, no, and that's how I feel. That's really how I feel. It's I've been really inspired by just the idea of building something that can continue and outlast you. If you're watching this and you have children, I'd love for Stoke to be there for your children to serve and donate to in the future, right? So I want my kids to be able to sit on the board, or contribute, or show up to galas in 50 years, right? That's the type of legacy that, and in order for that to happen, there needs to be space for other people to grow, right? And so, yeah, there's a young person, there's something really interesting. We had an employee who worked but when I started Stoke, they were in 3rd grade or 5th grade, and they had to write about jobs in the future that didn't exist right now. And they wrote about working for a charity that helped kids through skateboarding. and he ended up working at Stoked. And I was like, wow. So it's motivating to me to be able to build something that's going to outlast me and that is going to continue to help lots and lots of people in the future. And so I'm very confident with that. And so, officially, welcome to Stoked as the president. And yeah, so everybody, reach out to Patricia at stoked.org. Wish her luck. Tell her a story if tell her a story, or find out how to get more involved. Again, I'm still going to be on the board. I'll still be around. And I'm super excited. So congrats, Pat, on being here.
Thank you. Listen, you have some really big shoes to fill, and I'm just excited that I have some big shoes to fill, I should say. Just really excited that you created Stoke and that you thought outside the box and really figured out like how to communicate your passion in an art, in a sport, in an activity that would change lives. I mean, I don't even know if you realize how impactful Stoked would end up being because of your labor of love, because of your commitment, because of your personality, and how people just really love you, right? And support you and the work. And so what I want to do is be able to carry that on so that all the people who have supported Stoke know that there's even a bigger way, a bigger space for them to become involved. And I'm not talking about monetary, but just in terms of presence, because our students really need to see people. They need to hear your stories about how you overcame something and how did you remain focused and resilient. They need a pat on the back. They need an email reminding them of their greatness, validating them, because in this society, we always get told negative stories about people of color, particularly Black and brown people. And there are all these negative images. And so to the extent that you can remember that kindness has to be at the forefront of everything that you do, to remember like our Stoked core values, I think it just is going to continue to have a great impact and make this world a better place. So thank you, Steve.
Cool. So anybody that's watched this far, you've known why Pat was hired, and there you go. All right, Pat, thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.